The final day was supposed to be routine. One last shoot, one final wrap for the season. But instead, it exploded into the most chaotic meltdown in love and hip-hop history. From the very beginning, the energy on set felt strange. Producers whispered nervously while cameras rolled. Cast members exchanged tense glances. Everyone could sense it. The storm was coming. Mendecees entered with a cold, hard stare while Kirk was already pacing, restless and on edge. Their rivalry had been building for weeks, maybe even years, and today was the day it finally came to a head. It started with words, sharp, cutting, each one heavier than the last. Kirk smirked, throwing his trademark shade, while Mendecees snapped back louder, angrier. The crew froze in place as the tension thickened, and the air felt like it could crack at any moment. Then it happened. A shove, a chair crashing to the ground. The fight escalated instantly, and the set erupted into chaos. Producers screamed. Cast members scattered. Furniture flew. Drinks spilled across the floor. Mona Scott herself stormed in, shouting for order, her voice slicing through the madness. "Stop! Now!" But it was too late. The damage was already done. Kirk and Mendecees were far past reconciliation. This wasn't just an argument. This was years of pride, betrayal, and frustration unleashed in the worst way possible. The reunion stage transformed into a disaster zone, with tables flipped, props broken, and the set completely wrecked. Security stormed in while crew members scrambled to protect the cameras and equipment. The rest of the cast looked on in shock, unable to believe what they were witnessing. Yandy tried to calm things down, her voice cracking as she pleaded with Mendecees. Rasheeda stood in front of Kirk, desperate to pull him away. Even young Jock, always the joker, tried to mediate, but nothing could stop the rage in motion. Fans who later heard whispers from insiders said it felt like a bomb went off. And the most shocking part? Every second of it was caught on camera. This wasn't scripted drama anymore. This wasn't just TV. This was raw, unfiltered chaos. And the final day of filming would forever be remembered as the darkest moment the show had ever faced. Long before the final day's explosion, the cracks between Kirk and Mendecees had been spreading like wildfire. To the casual viewer, it looked like simple reality TV shade. A few sarcastic jabs, slick comments and confessionals, maybe some side-eye during group scenes. But those who really watched closely knew there was something darker brewing under the surface. This wasn't just television drama. This was a real rivalry building piece by piece, fueled by pride, ego, and the scars of past betrayals. At first, it seemed harmless. Kirk would clown Mendecees about being too soft, saying he let Yandy run his household. Mendecees would fire back, mocking Kirk for his history of infidelity and Rasheeda's years of suffering. Both men knew exactly where to strike, and their words cut deep. What started as playful shade quickly grew into a contest of dominance. Who was the real man? Who was the leader? And most importantly, who had the respect of the cast and the fans? Behind the cameras, producers noticed the tension and secretly fueled it. Drama drives ratings, and the rivalry was golden content. Small disagreements were magnified, situations engineered to bring both men face to face, often in setups where alcohol flowed freely and tempers could rise fast. It was a formula that had worked in the past, but this time, it spiraled far beyond what anyone expected. Mendecees was already under pressure, fresh out of legal battles, fighting to rebuild his image, and desperate to prove to Yandy, and himself, that he could stay on the right path. Kirk, on the other hand, carried years of baggage. His marriage with Rasheeda was still scarred by infidelity scandals. Fans doubted his sincerity. Even his closest friends questioned if he had really changed. For Kirk, every confrontation felt like another judgment, another reminder of mistakes he couldn't escape. What made it worse was pride. Neither man wanted to look weak, especially on camera. Every time they clashed, neither would back down. Their arguments weren't just words. They were battles of respect, with both men refusing to lose face in front of the cast, the crew, and the millions of fans watching at home. By the time the reunion rolled around, their feud had reached boiling point. The cast saw it coming. Yandy confided to friends that she dreaded filming days when Kirk was present. Rasheeda admitted she hated the way Kirk's temper flared whenever Mendecees walked in. Even young Jock joked on set, "Man, one of these days y'all gonna kill each other." It was meant as humor, but everyone knew it wasn't far from the truth. The producers thought they could contain it. They thought it was just TV. But the truth was, Kirk and Mendecees weren't playing characters anymore. This was personal. This was years of resentment, jealousy, and wounded pride colliding in slow motion. And on that final day, all those little sparks finally ignited into the explosion no one could stop. The reunion stage was already tense, but when Kirk and Mendecees locked eyes, the room shifted. It was like the oxygen got sucked out of the air. Producers tried to keep the conversation civil, steering questions toward lighter topics, but everyone knew it was only a matter of time before the simmering hostility boiled over. One wrong word, one wrong look, and the whole set would explode. It started subtly. Kirk muttered something under his breath, low enough that it almost went unnoticed, but Mendecees caught it. His head snapped up, his eyes narrowed, and in that instant, the reunion turned from scripted drama to a raw confrontation. "Say it louder," Mendecees demanded, his voice steady but full of warning. Kirk leaned back in his chair, smirked, and repeated it even clearer. "You ain't no man if you let your wife run your house." The crowd gasped, the cast stirred, and the tension spiked instantly. Mendecees leaned forward, his tone sharp. "At least I got a house to run, unlike you, still making excuses for your mess." Kirk chuckled, but there was no humor in it. His face tightened, and his hands gripped the armrest of his chair. The insults hit deeper than the cameras could capture. Each word wasn't just about the show, it was about manhood, pride, and respect. Yandy tried to step in. "Stop! Don't do this here!" But her voice was drowned out as Kirk stood up. His posture was aggressive, chest out, eyes burning. Mendecees rose to his feet, refusing to stay seated. Now they were face to face, just inches apart. The audience held its breath. The crew shifted nervously. Everyone knew this was the moment it could turn physical. The first shove came quick. Kirk pushed Mendecees back with both hands, the impact sending a chair crashing to the ground. Gasps filled the room. Security rushed forward, but Mendecees swung back with his own shove, harder, angrier. Suddenly, chaos erupted. Cast members screamed, producers shouted into headsets, and Mona Scott yelled for everyone to stop. But the floodgates were already open. Furniture toppled as the two men lunged at each other again. Drinks spilled, microphones dropped, and the set became a battlefield. Kirk tried to swing, but security grabbed his arm mid-motion. Mendecees broke free for a moment, his voice echoing across the stage. "You don't disrespect my family." Kirk barked back. "Then control yourself before you come at me." It was raw, violent energy, unlike anything the show had ever seen. The cameras never stopped rolling. Every second was captured. The sweat, the fury, the chaos. Young Jock jumped in, trying to hold Mendecees back, while Rasheeda screamed at Kirk to sit down. Yandy's face was a mix of fear and heartbreak as she begged her husband to stop. Crew members scattered, some shielding equipment, others ducking for safety. It felt less like a TV set and more like a street brawl. And no matter how many people tried to separate them, Kirk and Mendecees kept lunging, kept shouting, kept tearing into each other with a rage that had been years in the making. The fight was no longer about words. It was about dominance, respect, and years of unspoken resentment erupting in real time. By the time security managed to drag them apart, the set looked like a war zone. Chairs were overturned, props smashed, drinks dripping down the stage. Cast members sat in shock, silent, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. Mona Scott stood frozen, her face pale with disbelief. She had seen fights before, but nothing like this. This wasn't TV anymore. This was dangerous, real, and unforgettable. Real and unforgettable. The fight might have started between Kirk and Mendecees, but once fists nearly flew, the entire cast was pulled into the chaos. Everyone tried to intervene in their own way, but instead of calming things down, each attempt seemed to make the situation spiral even further out of control. Yandy was the first to act. She rushed forward, her hands out, her voice trembling as she pleaded with Mendecees to stop. "Please, this isn't worth it. Think about the kids. Think about us." But her words barely reached him. His chest was heaving, his eyes locked on Kirk like a predator unwilling to release its prey. Yandy's desperation was clear, yet her presence only fueled Kirk's anger. He sneered and snapped, "See? You can't even control him." That jab wasn't just to Mendecees, it was aimed at Yandy too, cutting her pride and deepening the wound. Rasheeda, terrified of what her husband might do next, tried to pull Kirk back. She gripped his arm, begging him to sit down, to stop before things went too far. But Kirk, already consumed by rage, shook her off with a violent shrug. "Get off me. I got this." The look on Rasheeda's face said it all: hurt, fear, and a quiet realization that this wasn't just a heated moment. This was a side of Kirk she could no longer defend. Young Jock stepped in next, playing the role of peacemaker. He moved quickly, trying to wedge himself between the two men. "Yo, chill! Y'all are doing too much! This ain't it!" His tone was firm, but Kirk shoved him aside like he wasn't even there. Jock stumbled, nearly knocking over a camera stand, and even he realized this was no ordinary fight. Later, Jock would say it felt like trying to stop a hurricane with bare hands. Other cast members shouted from the sidelines. Some begged for calm, others barked orders at security. The crew scrambled, pulling lighting rigs and equipment out of the way as the chaos spread across the stage. The reunion set, once carefully designed for TV glamour, now looked like a demolition site. And in the middle of it all, Mona Scott screamed for control, her voice nearly cracking as she tried to command order. But not even Mona, the queen of keeping chaos in check, could rein in this storm. The harder everyone tried to intervene, the worse it became. Every word, every plea, every physical attempt to separate them seemed to push Kirk and Mendecees further into their fury. Security doubled in numbers, rushing onto the stage, forming a wall between the two men. Yet even then, their voices thundered over the crowd, trading insults that pierced deeper than fists ever could. By the time Kirk was dragged to one side of the set and Mendecees to the other, the damage was undeniable. The cast looked broken, Yandy's makeup streaked with tears, Rasheeda trembling with frustration, Jock pacing in disbelief. Everyone had tried to stop it. Everyone had failed, and in that failure, one truth became painfully clear. The bonds holding this cast together had officially shattered. The set was supposed to represent reunion and closure. Bright lights, sleek furniture, carefully staged props to give viewers a polished experience. But in a matter of minutes, it was unrecognizable. Chairs were overturned, tables flipped, microphones scattered across the floor, and drinks soaked the carpet. What once looked like a TV stage now resembled a bar fight aftermath. The destruction wasn't just physical, it was symbolic. The show's carefully built image had crumbled before everyone's eyes. Mona Scott stormed onto the stage, her face a mixture of fury and disbelief. She had dealt with chaos before. She had managed brawls, walk-offs, screaming matches, but this was something different. This wasn't messy TV, this was dangerous. Her voice sliced through the noise as she shouted, "What the hell is wrong with you? Do you realize what you've just done?" The entire cast froze for a moment, not out of respect, but out of shock at Mona's rare loss of composure. Security was still restraining Kirk and Mendecees, each being dragged to opposite ends of the set. Their shirts were rumpled, their chests still heaving, and their eyes locked in pure hatred. Mona pointed at both of them, her anger boiling over. "You think this is a game? You just destroyed thousands of dollars worth of set design. You put this entire production at risk. You put yourselves at risk." Her voice echoed across the wreckage, but neither man responded. They were still too far gone, still trapped in the rage of the moment. Meanwhile, the crew was scrambling. Stagehands rushed to salvage what they could, pulling broken props off camera, trying desperately to restore order. Camera operators stayed locked in, capturing every detail. They knew Mona might be furious, but this footage was gold, shocking, raw, and guaranteed to dominate headlines. For every producer who panicked, there was another whispering that this could be the biggest ratings boost the show had ever seen. The rest of the cast sat in silence, their faces pale with shock. Yandy held her head in her hands. Rasheeda quietly wiped tears from her eyes, and Jock shook his head, muttering under his breath. They weren't just watching a set being destroyed. They were watching the show they had invested years into unravel in real time. Mona wasn't done. She stepped closer to Kirk, jabbing a finger in his direction. "You, out of all people, I should know better." Then she turned to Mendecees. "And you? After everything you've been through, this is what you give us? This is how you represent yourself?" Her disappointment was heavier than her rage. For Mona, this wasn't just about the fight. It was about losing control of the empire she had worked so hard to build. As security continued holding the men back, Mona's voice dropped, calmer but sharper, almost like a blade. "You've embarrassed yourselves. You've embarrassed this show. And trust me, there will be consequences." Her words hung in the air, leaving the cast stunned. No one dared to respond. The set was in ruins. The cast was in shock. And Mona Scott, for the first time, looked like she wasn't sure if this franchise could survive what just happened. Security swarmed the stage like soldiers entering a war zone. Within seconds, Kirk was dragged toward one corner, Mendecees toward another. Their arms pinned, their movements restricted. Both men fought against the grip of the guards, still shouting over shoulders, still straining to break free. Their anger wasn't cooling down. It was burning hotter, spilling out in curses, insults, and promises that the fight wasn't over. The crew scrambled to clear the wreckage. Broken chairs were pushed aside, toppled tables stacked in a corner, wires quickly coiled before someone tripped. Camera operators stayed in place, recording everything. The raw aftermath, the heavy breathing, the chaos that still lingered in the air. This wasn't just a fight anymore. It was history in the making, and every second mattered. Yandy rushed to Mendecees, trying to shield him from the cameras. Her voice shook as she begged, "Stop, please. Don't give them more to use against you." But he brushed her off, his glare fixed firmly on Kirk. Across the stage, Rasheeda stood frozen, her arms crossed tight against her chest. She didn't speak. She didn't move. Her silence was louder than any scream, a mix of anger and disappointment that cut through Kirk more than he would ever admit. Kirk tried to lunge forward again, but 3 guards held him back. His voice thundered across the set, calling Mendecees weak, a coward, a man hiding behind his wife. The insults were vicious, and though Mendecees barked back just as fiercely, his face showed something else: exhaustion. Years of pressure, years of struggle, all exploding in a moment he couldn't take back. Meanwhile, the other cast members huddled together, whispering in disbelief. Jock shook his head, muttering, "This ain't what we signed up for." A few nodded. Others stayed quiet, eyes darting nervously toward Mona, who still stood in the center of the wreckage like a general surveying a battlefield. Her jaw was tight, her eyes sharp. She wasn't just furious, she was calculating. She knew the headlines this would generate, the firestorm that was coming, and the damage control she'd have to orchestrate before the sun came up. As Kirk was escorted out, Rasheeda followed behind him, her face pale and expressionless. She didn't look back at the others, didn't offer a word of comfort. Yandy, still clutching Mendecees' arm, finally convinced him to sit, but his body was tense, his fists clenched. The fight was over for now, but the war between them was far from finished. In the silence that followed, only one truth lingered. Nothing about the show would ever be the same again. Nothing about the show would ever be the same again. The chaos didn't stay contained to the set. Within hours, whispers leaked online. A stagehand tweeted a cryptic message: "You won't believe what went down at the reunion today. Madness." From there, the rumors spread like wildfire. By the next morning, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok were drowning in speculation. Fans wanted answers, and they wanted them now. Clips began surfacing. shaky, low-quality videos from people in the audience who managed to capture pieces of the brawl. In one clip, Kirk's shove sent a chair tumbling. In another, Mendecees lunged forward while producers screamed in the background. The footage wasn't polished, but it was enough to confirm the chaos. Within hours, hashtags like #LHH Fight, Kirk vs. Mendecees, and Love and Hip Hop Meltdown were trending worldwide. The fan base quickly split into sides. Some defended Mendecees, praising him for standing his ground and calling Kirk toxic for dragging Rasheeda through years of drama. Others backed Kirk, claiming Mendecees was out of line and too easily provoked. Entire threads turned into debates, with thousands of comments arguing over who was right, who was wrong, and whether the fight was even real. YouTube reaction videos popped up overnight. Influencers broke down the clips frame by frame, analyzing body language, replaying the shoves, and questioning if Mona Scott had planned it all for ratings. Memes flooded timelines, Kirk flipping furniture, Mendecees glaring like a villain, Rasheeda and Yandy looking exhausted as the so-called moms of chaos. What was devastating for the cast became entertainment for the masses. But not all reactions were playful. Some fans were furious, calling for both men to be removed from the franchise. Comments like, "This isn't entertainment anymore, it's dangerous," and "cancel the whole reunion" gained traction. Others worried about the women, pointing out how Rasheeda and Yandy were left humiliated, forced to clean up after their husbands' explosions. By the end of the week, the fight wasn't just a moment, it was a movement. Blogs ran headlines like "Love and Fi," "Hip-Hop Reunion Descends into Chaos," and "Kirk and Mendecees Destroy the Set in Explosive Fight." Entertainment outlets that normally ignored reality TV suddenly picked up the story. The incident wasn't just confined to fans anymore. It had gone mainstream, and through all the noise, one question echoed louder than the rest. Was this the beginning of the end for Love and Hip Hop? Or the scandal that would make it bigger than ever? As the online firestorm grew, the cast itself began to fracture behind the scenes. Rumors spread quickly. Some whispered that Kirk was done with the show for good, while others claimed Mendecees had threatened to walk if producers didn't take action. Every phone call, every leaked message only added fuel to the chaos. Nobody trusted anybody, and the air around production felt toxic. Backstage, tensions hit a breaking point. Yandy was furious, not just at Mendecees for losing control, but at the producers for letting it escalate. She argued that the setup was intentional, designed to push him over the edge. "You put him in that position," she snapped during a heated off-camera exchange. Rasheeda, meanwhile, was exhausted. She told friends privately that she was tired of cleaning up Kirk's mess, tired of defending a man who always found himself at the center of scandal. For her, quitting wasn't just a rumor, it was a real possibility. The production team scrambled for solutions. Some pushed to reshoot parts of the reunion, hoping to salvage usable footage. Others argued it was too risky, fearing the cast wouldn't even show up. Mona Scott held emergency meetings, juggling damage control while planning how to spin the chaos into television gold. To her, this wasn't just about salvaging the reunion. It was about saving the franchise's reputation. Leaks made everything worse. Anonymous crew members fed gossip blogs details of the destruction, broken cameras, equipment damage, crew injuries narrowly avoided. TMZ-style outlets ran wild with stories about the riot on set. Fans didn't know what was real and what was exaggerated, but the uncertainty only deepened the drama. By midweek, talk of walkouts dominated social media. Jock hinted in a live video that some people might not come back, while Erica Mena threw shade in a cryptic Instagram story about fake loyalty. The cast wasn't just divided, they were imploding. Every friendship, every alliance was suddenly in question. The reunion episode, once expected to be the highlight of the season, now hung in limbo. Some insiders claimed producers were considering canceling it entirely, while others suggested they might air the chaos uncut, letting the world see exactly how far things had spiraled. Either way, the damage was already done. The cast no longer felt like a family. They felt like enemies trapped in the same cage. And for fans, one chilling thought remained. If the show itself couldn't survive this fallout, maybe the empire of love and hip-hop was finally starting to collapse from within. Away from the cameras and social media noise, the fallout became deeply personal. Each of the central players, Kirk, Rasheeda, Mendecees, and Yandy, found themselves battling private storms that were far more complicated than the public ever realized. The reunion fight was just the spark, but the fire it ignited exposed years of buried resentment, marital strain, and emotional exhaustion. For Kirk, the aftermath was nothing short of humiliating. He had spent years trying to rebuild his image after past scandals, yet once again he was branded the villain. Headlines painted him as reckless, disrespectful, and incapable of growth. Behind closed doors, he was defensive, telling friends that Mendecees provoked him and that the situation was unfairly blown out of proportion. But late at night, when the noise quieted, even Kirk couldn't ignore the truth. His pattern of bad decisions was costing him not just fans, but also Rasheeda's patience. He had worked hard to hold his marriage together, yet somehow it always seemed to be slipping through his fingers. Rasheeda, meanwhile, was battling her own silent war. To the public, she appeared calm and collected, the strong wife holding everything together. But behind the scenes, she was tired. Tired of defending Kirk, tired of sacrificing her peace for the sake of loyalty, tired of smiling while carrying invisible scars. Friends close to her revealed that she questioned whether love was enough anymore. The reunion fight wasn't just another scandal to clean up. It was a mirror reflecting how fragile her marriage truly was. She loved Kirk, but the weight of constant drama left her wondering if love without respect could really survive. For Mendecees, the fight triggered emotions he thought he had left behind. Having spent years behind bars, he prided himself on staying calm and avoiding reckless choices. Yet in a single heated moment, he felt dragged back into old habits, reacting with anger, letting his temper take control. That realization crushed him. Publicly, he defended himself, claiming he had every right to confront Kirk. Privately, he wrestled with guilt. He feared Yandy would see him as a liability rather than a partner. The brawl didn't just threaten his reputation. It shook his identity as a man who promised to change. Yandy carried her disappointment like a heavy shadow. She had fought for Mendecees during his darkest years, holding their family together when prison walls kept them apart. She expected better from him now, expected wisdom, growth, restraint. Instead, she found herself once again forced to justify his behavior. To friends, she vented about being tired of cleaning up after men who refused to control themselves. The reunion was supposed to be about celebrating survival, success, and second chances. Instead, it reminded her of how fragile their stability really was. Together, these 4 lives painted a picture of relationships stretched thin by fame, loyalty tested by betrayal, and love constantly overshadowed by chaos. For the cameras, they were stars in an explosive reality show. But behind the lens, they were just people, vulnerable, wounded, and questioning whether the battles they were fighting were even worth it anymore. The reunion may have been just one night, but for Kirk, Rasheeda, Mendecees, and Yandy, it forced a reckoning. Not just with each other, but with themselves. Were they willing to keep fighting for marriages that the world loved to pick apart? Or had the weight of fame, betrayal, and broken trust already taken too much? The dust may have settled on the reunion stage, but the aftermath was far from over. Cast members went silent, producers dodged questions, and fans were left replaying shaky audience footage for clues. The fight didn't just break chairs, it shattered trust, friendships, and the already fragile marriages at the center of it all. The next morning, blogs flooded timelines with conflicting headlines. Some declared Kirk and Mendecees finished with the franchise, while others teased that Mona Scott would spin the chaos into ratings gold. No one knew the truth, but everyone had an opinion. The fan base remained deeply divided. Was Mendecees justified in defending himself, or did he overreact? Was Kirk a provocateur clinging to relevance, Or just a man tired of being disrespected? And most importantly, where did Rasheeda and Yandy stand after being dragged through public humiliation yet again? The silence from both women spoke louder than any post or press statement. Now the questions shift to you, the viewer. Should the men be forgiven, or is it finally time for Rasheeda and Yandy to walk away? Should the franchise enforce stricter boundaries, or is this chaos exactly what makes love and hip-hop addictive? Drop your thoughts below. Whose side are you on?